Besides, we will have Miss Trang to Miss Trang.
Oh,
we got Tony here.
yes, I've got a problem with the screen.
Yeah. So good morning, our presenters and participants. Welcome to the Virtual Viet TESOL International Convention 2021. On behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to thank you so much for your participation and contribution to our annual convention success. We are Lê Thị Thúy Hà and Trang Thị Hiên as the presentation moderators. We are delighted to see all of you in light of virtual present today, especially in this parallel live oral presentation. We do hope that all of you will be able to have some valuable knowledge and experience as takeaways following the talk. Before the presentation, there's a few considerations. In case you have any questions or concerns about the presentation, please feel free to leave them in the chat box so that we can gather the questions for easy response in the 5 to 10 minutes Q&A session. We gladly welcome Tony Richardson and Nguyen Tam in this parallel live audio presentation, which is entitled The Use of Teachers' Feedback to Develop Students' Future Actionable Knowledge, Assessment to Learning. About our presenter, Dr. Tony Richardson is a freelance education consultant. He has 35 years of experience in primary, secondary, and tertiary education and educational research. His interests are teacher quality, value adding, and informative assessment. Tony is currently the project director for the integration of financial literacy into Cambodian government schools. And bà Nguyễn Tam Trang, she has been teaching at Faculty of English, Hanoi National University of Education, Vietnam, for a variety of fields since 2006. Her responsibility covers teaching and trainings and the preserved and inserted ESL teachers, developing teaching syllabus and materials, and conducting research. Her interests includes ELT methodologies, assessment, critical thinking, ESP, and learner autonomy. Currently, she is a PhD student at Faculty of Education, Monash University, Australia. So please welcome Tony Richardson and Nguyen Tam.
I must apologize because the screen for some reason is not working properly. So it's causing a bit of a hassle there. Trang, can you put up?
Yeah, I think that you can try removing the background. I think it's because of the background.
Okay.
The virtual background that previously you selected it. That's great.
Sorry.
It's okay without the virtual. You look at, you can see your face.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'll just bring up the. Can you bring up the slides, please, Karen?
Miss Hian, could you please share the slide? Maybe Tony have some problem with sharing the slide.
Yeah, I'm having some issues here.
Okay. Is it okay? You see the screen?
Yes, yeah. Okay. Okay, well, I'll start off then. I apologize for the what's been happening. I guess it's just the way in which things have worked out. But today's presentation, I'm looking at teachers' feedback with regards to future actionable knowledge, and emphasising the use of assessment to learning. Now, the slides aren't moving now. Thank you. So one of the key things that we have to focus on in relation to assessment to learning is feedback. And I've been listening to some of the presentations that have been occurring today, and I think they're fantastic. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to in relation to when we talk about students is the teacher providing the student with feedback. And feedback is one of the most important things that is required in relation to improving a student's in-class learning. And we know from the work of, for example, a gentleman called John Hattie, that there are challenges in delivering proper feedback or effective feedback to students. Now, what we suggest in relation to being able to help to achieve that outcome is that we use what we refer to as future actionable knowledge. And future actionable knowledge is a combination of a number of different applications that we have previously, I suppose, researched and conducted some work on. Now, one of the key areas of this relates to assessment to learning. Now, assessment to learning is a new concept. It's not something that people have previously been looking at. Other elements of assessment normally are assessment for learning, assessment of learning, and assessment as learning. Assessment to learning has a grounding in explicit instruction. And I think that many of you would be aware of the notions of explicit instruction and direct instruction. And there has been some discussion about the significance or the relevance of explicit instruction or direct instruction in the current educational environment, given that we focus very much on the need to address student-centered learning. Now, direct instruction or explicit instruction, or in this case, explicit instruction, focuses very much on the teacher and the student working together, where the teacher is able to become involved in what's taking place. And this is the essence of what assessment to learning is about. It's a collaborative approach between the teacher and the student. In breaking this down, what then happens is that in order for this learning to occur, we talk about the use of multidimensional discourse. And multidimensional discourse is the interaction between the teacher, the peers, and their students. And this way, knowledge is created, new knowledge is created, whereby the focus is on moving forward, or in this case, with regards to feedback, feed-forward learning. So what we talk about is the notion of that people provide feedback, but ultimately, how is that feedback being used to allow someone to move forward? So in the context of feedback, the discussion there centers around the idea that we know what feedback is, but the question is, how is feedback used? Okay, next slide, please. Now, assessment to learning, as I've highlighted to you now, is a formative assessment approach. We know that formative assessment is different to summative assessment, and formative assessment is one of the most crucial elements in relation to teaching students, but it's also about teachers themselves learning about what they can understand from the work that they've done with their students. Now, from our perspective, formative assessment in relation to assessment to learning emphasises social constructivism. It's via the collective and sharing of knowledge through guided and planned incremental learning. So what does that mean? It means that in the context of assessment to learning, it's using the concepts of Vygotsky, and we're talking about this notion of social constructivism in the sense that learning is the result of the interaction between a number of different people, and those people are the teacher, the learner, and their peers. And what we're doing is that we're collecting and sharing knowledge. So that means that this social interaction that occurs results in the collective and sharing of knowledge that, in a sense, has been planned and guided through incremental learning. So we're allowing the student to engage in a learning process that travels through a journey that is incrementally moving as they move through. So, for example, in explicit teaching, the idea is that what you're doing is that you are building on the knowledge that a student has to where a student wants to go. So therefore, the goal of assessment to learning is to capture an impact on the learner's learning journey. So we don't see an assessment task as simply the outcome of something, rather the assessment task is the result of us being able to very clearly and very, to direct, facilitate and plan basically the learner's journey as they move from point A to point B to point C, etc. Now, ATL achieves this goal by acknowledging the power of the collective learning experiences, and collective experiences. Now, the way in which this is achieved is through future actual knowledge. And future actual knowledge, in a sense, is one of the most key elements. So what it does is the main challenge with feedback is its inability to impact on an outcome once the student has presented something. So what that basically means is that a student presents something in class, and once that has occurred, you give them feedback. But that feedback can't make much of a difference on what they have done, and that causes problems for students. So ATL focuses on the learning outcome as a learning journey, breaks it down into the interconnected, incremental learning stages that the teacher and the students impact upon as a learning journey unfolds, which means that the learning journey has been broken down into cognitive learning stages. Now, therefore, the student's learning outcome is developed and improved upon by the student, the teachers, and their peers working together. Now, in the context of this, what this means then is that this improvement is reflected in the knowledge, the future knowledge that is derived by these people to help the students then to move forward. So in a sense, what that means is that the incremental development of the students' learning is a result of a compilation of future actionable knowledge, or knowledge which has been developed to allow the student to move forward, at the same time allowing the teacher to understand how that student's cognitive development has taken place. Now, this forward movement we refer to as, we say, is future actionable knowledge. And that's a really important term, because the idea being is that the knowledge is being sought to create an understanding whereby the student and the teacher can move forward incrementally to achieve an outcome. And the way that this is achieved is through multi-dimensional discourse. Okay, next one, please. Now, multi-dimensional discourse, as it relates to what we're talking about here, discusses the interaction between the student, the peer, and the teacher. So what does that mean? Well, basically what it means is that in relation to the discussions that occur, that each person with regards to looking at the incremental development, and each person looking at the stages of development, and each person looking at the need to move forward in that development, has to look at the way in which the discussion is being directed by the teacher to focus on the importance of feedback and feed forward. So the discussions that occur, these multi-dimensional discussions that occur in relation to feedback, the information relates to where the student needs to focus on. So what that means is that when you look at the incremental development and you look at the student processes there, what you're focusing on basically is saying, okay, this is where the student needs to make improvements in their work. But the feed forward then needs to occur in relation to the how. How does this occur? How does the teacher, the peer, and the student find ways in which they can then focus their attention on where the issues are or the challenges are, and how the information can then be developed in such a way that the student can then move forward to the next point of their development or their cognitive development. So in the context of multidimensional discourses, the key things are not just simply telling someone what they have done wrong, but where they have made errors and how those errors can be rectified to allow them to move forward to the next point. And again, in the context of explicit instruction, that's one of the key elements, making sure that people are aware of what's required before they move to the next stage. So the multidimensional discourse represents the discussions that take place, and so therefore this feedback to highlight where and the how. Now, this feedback and feed-forward knowledge is referred to as feedback, feed-forward learning. Okay, next one, please. Now, in the context of feedback, feed-forward learning, this notion is very, very simple. And the simplicity of the notion is this, is that it's about understanding where you are and how you need to get to the next point. But in the context of that next point, it's the entire journey that the student is moving through in an incremental basis. So it's about making sure that the student understands this is where they need to go to, and this is how they need to get there. And at the moment, these are some of the challenges that they are facing. How do we give them knowledge? How do we give them information we call future actionable knowledge that allows them to move forward in order to achieve that outcome? And so therefore, what that means basically is that in addressing students' complaints about feedback, not focusing on after the event outcomes, what we're talking about is ways to provide and benefit students with regards to working together collaboratively to understand where they need to go and how they need to get there. Okay, next one, please. Now, this is a fairly complex understanding, a fairly complex way of doing things. And if people are interested in learning more about this, if people are interested in gaining some more information about this, we are more than happy through Ms. Thao and Ms. Trang and Ms. An at these addresses here to be able to make contact and to be able to link with you to provide you with more information about how assessment to learning could be utilised within the context of your teaching. The important thing is this, and I think it's a significant thing to say, that it's acknowledged by everyone, every educator, that the current system that we're using to educate our children is not actively or effectively working as it should. There's an academic in Australia called Gonti. He recently wrote a report about this in the Gonti report, and he said the problem that we've got is that the issue at hand here is that the system that we're using in Australia alone has failed to educate lots of children. And so what we have to do, I believe, is to find ways in which we can move out of this industrial model that we've currently been using and move forward and to be able to create a better learning environment. Okay, thank you.
We would like to share our big thanks for your great presentation. Now we are happy to receive any question that you may have for our presenter, please. I received a question on Dripta, Tony. That is, how can you ensure that the quality of feedback giving either empowering?
Sorry, the reception there was not very good. I couldn't hear the whole point there, sorry.
The question here is, what is the quality of feedback giving?
I'm sorry, Trang, can you hear the, I couldn't hear my audio is not working very well with regards to the continuity of what's being said.
Okay, the question here
you
is,
look at the chat. So the question is, how can we be assured of the quality of feedback? Can you hear me?
The quality of what, sorry?
The quality of feedback.
Oh, the quality of feedback. I apologize, sorry, the reception. Look, but when we talk about the quality of feedback, you have to understand that that quality is based around a clear understanding of what the outcomes were intended to be with respect to the learning journey and the incremental development of that journey. So what that means then is that the way in which you would determine the quality of that feedback is in the way in which the student is able to move forward in the future actionable knowledge. So it's not so much the feedback that's a significant thing, but rather how that feedback can be utilised by the student to move to their next stage, which is the feed forward. So to be able to determine the quality of the feedback, you would have to see the impact that takes place in relation to the student and how they can demonstrate the cognitive skills that were expected to be seen in relation to that next particular incremental development. You want to add to that, Trang?
Thank you very much. And one more question from Dripta. Why do you choose to study the subject?
why do I choose to study the subject? Which
very interesting. The research topic. Why do we choose assessment?
Okay, that's a very good question.
Very interesting.
I guess why does someone climb a mountain? It's there. No. The answer to that question is that I'm a passionate believer. I believe, and I believe also Trang and An and Thao also have the same view, that we need to, as a society, begin to understand how we can help to improve the learning of our young students. And I think that from what I've seen and what I've been looking at and what we have been as a team developing, is that we need to find different ways in which we can take a different approach to the way in which we focus on assessment. And I think that assessment is something that should be seen as not just basically for students, but for also teachers. And I think that assessment should be something that should also be able to be used effectively in a greater way to be able to have a positive impact on students. And it's what I call value adding to their learning. So how can we use what we have to value add to the learning of the student so that the student can achieve the best that they can in whatever they do? And I mean, like, Vietnam and Singapore, for example, have achieved outstanding results recently, over the last couple of years in relation to education. And I think the opportunity in Vietnam exists now, as it does in Singapore, to be able to really move ahead and to really elevate and lift the level of education in both those countries, to be able to provide an exemplar to how other parts of the world possibly could succeed in their education fields.
Yeah. And
thank you. It's very interesting answers.
Some more thing is that this highlights the significance of our research, because as you might listen to what Tony has mentioned previously, there are assessment to learning, assessment for learning, and assessment as learning. And Tony can talk more about why we choose assessment to learning. So this is the very first time the term has been coined by our group, generated from Tony's idea.
Oh, well, it's all our ideas, not just mine. It's collective work. As we say, it's collective and sharing of knowledge.
We have been working towards developing the assessment for learning and formative assessment, and we talk a lot about assessment. So that's why our ideas comes from.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot for an interesting idea about what research is based on. Okay. So due to the limited time, we cannot include all of the questions in the Q&A session. So the audience or participant can email the presenters directly, okay, for your inquiries, okay. So on behalf of VIC 2021, we wish you all the best with a productive day and meaningful rest of our virtual conventions. Thank you a lot. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
I apologize. Sorry, I apologize for the errors here.
Can you please turn on your camera so we can take a whole picture? Okay, to memorize this convention day. So you can choose the direction or your heart side or kinds of thing.
Okay, Ian.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, and Trang. Thank you for great presentation.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nguyen.
Yeah. And goodbye.
Bye.
Yeah.